Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about what is paralytic squint and its clinical features. So today we are taking it very briefly that what is paralytic squint, what are its causes, and what are the clinical features which are commonly seen in a patient with a paralytic squint. So let's start at. So etiologically, when we say paralytic squint, so these are caused because of three types of lesions. So either this paralysis of the muscle or paralysis of a particular nerve could be reason because of a neurogenic lesion. Either it could be myogenic or a neuromuscular junction. So neurogenic, when I say the term neurogenic means the damage to a particular nerve. Myogenic is basically a damage to your muscle, and neuromuscular means the point where your nerve and a muscle is joining. So when you see this etiological classification, so neurogenic causes, if you see, the first is congenital lesions. So congenital lesions could be either hypoplasia, that is your maldevelopment or malformation, or absence of a nucleus. So there are different nucleus which are your third nerve nucleus, sixth nerve nucleus. So if there is a birth injury because of your birth injury leading to a congenital lesion, so that could something lead to your paralysis of a particular muscle. Second is inflammatory lesions. So inflammatory lesions, when we say, these could be your encephalitis, meningitis, neurosyphilis, your peripheral neuritis, which are commonly because of viral infections. So the nerve trunk may also be involved into the infectious lesion of your cavernous sinus or the orbit. So inflammation because of any of the conditions mentioned, like for example encephalitis or meningitis or neurosyphilis or any viral condition, that could lead to an inflammation of your nerves that possibly can result into a paralysis of your nerve, leading to your paralysis of or rather extraocular muscle, that is paralytic squint. Next is neoplastic lesion, which could be including your brain tumors, including the nuclei or the nerve root or the intracranial part of the nerves, or also intraorbital tumors. So this neoplastic lesions are basically tumors inside your brain which are affecting the different nerve which are passing through that area. So wherever the lesion is, depending on the nerves which are around it, that could lead to your neoplastic lesion causing a paralytic squint. Next is your vascular lesions. So these are your patients, these are generally the old age patients. So these could be your patient with hypertension, diabetes mellitus, atherosclerosis. So what happens that in the brain, sometimes there is hemorrhage, thrombosis, embolism, or an aneurysm, or either a vascular occlusion, leading to obstruction of your normal functioning of nerve at the same time. So because of which a nerve can be compressed because of your vascular lesion, and we all know the moment there is a compression onto the nerve will not function properly and could lead to a paralysis or a paralysis of a particular nerve. So if there is any of the nerve which is supplying the extraocular muscle getting compressed because of a vascular lesion, that could also lead to a paralytic squint. Next is your traumatic lesion. So when we say the traumatic lesion, these could be your direct or indirect trauma to the nerve trunk because of a head injury. So it could be an open head injury or it could be a closed head injury. So whenever, even in concussion sometime, or rather you had a head injury because of which there was a clot or something into the brain, leading to a compression of nerve, that could also lead to your paralytic squint. Next is toxic lesions, which are sometimes your carbon monoxide poisoning, your diphtheria toxins, or alcoholism, which could lead to your neuropathy. So whenever there is a neuropathy because of the conditions, that could also lead to your paralytic squint. And finally there is demyelinating lesions, the multiple sclerosis and diffuse sclerosis, where the myelin sheath is getting affected. There is a sclerosis of your nerves, leading to your improper functioning of a particular nerve, that could also lead to paralytic squint. Coming on to the second type, which is your myogenic lesion. So myogenic could be your congenital, traumatic, inflammatory, or myopathy. So congenital, again, it could be either the hypoplasia or either the malinsertion of your muscle where it should be properly inserted, it is not inserted that point, or either it could be your musculofacial anomaly of the extraocular muscles, or either the weakness. So these are generally your congenital lesions of your myogenic lesions. Traumatic, when we say traumatic lesions, are in the form of lacerations, disinsertions. So let's say in a sports a particular person had a hit onto the lateral wall of your orbit, and that hit very badly, such that there was a laceration onto your lateral rectus, or either a surgery which was performed and there was a disinsertion of your lateral rectus, or a hemorrhage which is leading to an obstruction. So that all can lead to a what we say paralytic squint. Inflammatory lesion are your myocystitis, usually a viral in origin, or either it could be because of influenza, measles, or other viral fever. And finally, the myopathies, when we say in myopathies, these will include your thyroid myopathy, your carcinomatous myopathy, which are associated with certain drugs, or either your chronic progressive external ophthalmoplegia. So these are your myogenic lesions. And finally, the neuromuscular junction. So these include mostly one particular kind, which is myasthenia gravis. We all know what is myasthenia gravis. Here the patient, there is a problem into the choline channels, so which are getting fatigued. So the in this it is primarily seen that the fatigueness of the muscles is very seen. So when you do a tensilon test, you will find out that the patient is having a myasthenia gravis. So these are the etiology or the causes of your paralytic squint. Next is clinical features. So in clinical features, you have first is diplopia and confusion. So why diplopia happens? It is very simple that in paralytic squint, what is happening uh, at the particular gaze, or rather the field where the action of muscle is present. So let's say there is a patient with your lateral rectus palsy, right lateral rectus palsy. So the right eye cannot move onto the right side. Okay, so whenever the patient will look onto the right side, the eye will not move at all, whereas the left eye, which is unaffected, will move, and there will be two different images in both the eyes. So because of which the patient will have diplopia. Okay, so when you show the patient a particular image, he will have one image which is a false image because the eye is not moving, and one image which is perceived by the non-affected eye, and the patient will have a diplopia. So generally the patient gets confused that exactly where this image is lying. So what happens that the patient is unable to find that where exactly the hand is. So let's say if you show a hand to the patient on the right hand side of a right lateral rectus palsy patient, he will not be able to exactly say if this is your hand or this is your hand. So there is a diplopia, doubling of the image. At the same time, he is confused that which image is correct or actually to be perceived. Second is ocular deviation, which is a very prominent differentiation between a paralytic and a non-paralytic squint. So what happens in primary deviation, which is the unaffected eye fixing, you will find out that the amount of deviation is lesser, and when you ask the patient to fixate with the affected eye, it will increase the amount of deviation, which is your secondary deviation. So in this case, what has happened here, the patient has a right lateral rectus palsy. Okay, paresis or a paralysis, you can say. When you ask the patient to fixate with the left eye, the amount of deviation is, there is esotropia, true, but it is lesser in amount. But when you ask the patient to fixate with the affected eye, which is the right eye, so to do that, the patient will use all his power in the lateral rectus, which is paresis. So it is partially functioning, but because of that excessive innervation, we all know there is your Herring's law, your Herring's and Sherrington's law. So because of Herring's law, when you see more innervation into this lateral rectus, simultaneously this medial rectus will get excessive amount of innervation, leading to more amount of deviation or more inward positioning of the eye. So what happens, the secondary deviation will be more when compared to the primary deviation. What is primary deviation? That is when you ask the unaffected eye to fixate, and when you ask the patient to fixate with the affected eye, that is your secondary deviation. So this is what is happening. So if you see, when the patient was asked to fixate with the normal eye, the amount of deviation was lesser, but the moment you ask the patient to fixate with the affected eye, the amount of deviation increases. That is because of the simple Hering's law. So here if you see, when you ask the patient to fixate with the unaffected eye, these are your innervations which are going, which is same in all. But when you ask the patient to fixate with the affected eye, so this is your paralyzed muscle, your right lateral rectus, that has to get more amount of innervation compared to a normal muscle. So because of this excessive innervation, this muscle will also get more innervation as per the Hering's law, and that will start overacting more, leading to a more amount of ocular deviation. Coming on to ocular movement, so ocular movement will be affected. So whenever you ask the patient to look opposite to the affected muscle gaze, it will has less amount of deviation. So in this patient again, this is a right lateral rectus palsy patient, so this is your primary position. You will find out that it is having a right esotropia. Okay, so when you will ask the patient to look onto the left side, which is opposite the action of your muscle, because the action of your right lateral rectus is right side, not left side, it is opposite. So here the medial rectus is functioning quite good. So what will happen when the patient will look onto the left side, there will be less amount of deviation or no deviation. But the moment you will ask the patient to look onto the right side, which is the action of your paralyzed muscle, the amount of deviation will increase much more further, and you will see more amount of deviation compared to the primary gaze. So simple, if I say, whenever you ask the patient to look onto the opposite side of the affected muscle, there will be less deviation, and whenever you ask the patient to look towards the affected muscle, that side the amount of deviation will increase. So that gives you a very simple understanding to how to find out which muscle is exactly affected. Coming on to the next clinical feature, which is past pointing. So past pointing is nothing but because of that excessive innervation which is going into the brain thinks that the object is further than the actual point. So if you see, this is a von Graffe method of past pointing. So here what happens, in this point the patient has a left lateral rectus palsy. So when you close the sound eye, only this eye is actually which is seeing. So if you see, in this case I said it is a left lateral rectus palsy, so this side is the action of your affected muscle. So when you go opposite side, the patient exactly points where it is, the image where it is actually, the patient will exactly point it out. He will find out where it is placed in physical space. But as you take it closer to the field of muscle action, which is your lateral side, so when you take it in the primary position, he will do a past pointing, though the pencil is here, but because of over innervation to the muscle to keep it into that position, the brain will think that the image is further away from that particular point, and the patient will say he can see the image here, and as you take it further towards the action of your muscle, the past pointing will increase. So this is happening because the brain is giving more innervation to the muscle, and because of those innervation, the brain thinks that the image is further away from the actual point where the object is kept. So that is what is called as past pointing. Next is nausea, vertigo and dizziness. So these are your symptoms which are seen because the patient is having the amount of diplopia, confusion. So because of the amount of diplopia and your asthenopic symptom, the patient will start having this feeling of nausea, vertigo and dizziness. The patient will not be able to concentrate at any one place, and he will start having all this kind of symptoms. Finally, there is muscle sequelae. So muscle sequelae is nothing but these are your long term developments which are seen, or what we say, the long term problems which are seen into the patients. This is also the reason how your concomitant squint transforms into a concomitant squint. So what happens, this is a case of a primary lateral rectus paralysis. So what happened, because of the primary lateral rectus paralysis, your medial rectus started overacting. So once this medial rectus started overacting, so what happened, that led to a contracture of this medial rectus. Okay, so as this medial rectus was already overacting, So when we all know for convergence what happens, your both the medial rectus has to function properly. So because of the overaction of your medial rectus, which is primarily resulting from the lateral rectus palsy of this muscle, so that starts an overaction of medial rectus leading to a contracture of this muscle. So what will happen, that already this eye is into a convergent position, so there is no more further requirement of innervation to medial rectus to perform a convergence. So this muscle doesn't require any innervation because already it is into a convergent position. So because of this contracture, here what will happen, this muscle corresponds to your lateral rectus of the other eye. So because this is not acting with full power, in full power, so what will happen, this muscle will also start underacting and there is a secondary palsy. Okay, primarily the right lateral rectus was paralyzed, which led to your underaction of the same eye medial rectus and overaction of the other eye medial rectus. And because of this medial rectus which is underacting, the other eyes lateral rectus will also start underacting, as they are also called as your simultaneous muscles. So whenever you are looking onto the left gaze, what is happening, this and this muscle needs to get same amount of innervation, but for left gaze this already eye is into a convergent position, so it doesn't require further innervation. So that will also lead to less amount of innervation to this muscle, leading to a secondary palsy. So this is what is your what we say, your muscle sequelae happens. There is a secondary palsy of the other muscles also, and it is done with the same mechanism every time. Coming on to your abnormal head posture and sensory adaptation, as I have already explained earlier, your abnormal head posture is a very clear indication of how this squint has been developed. So if a patient again with right lateral rectus palsy, he has an esotropia into the primary gaze, but when he looks onto the left side, what happens, there is no squint present. So what he'll do is he will turn, or rather what we say, there is a face turn towards the affected muscle side. So he will turn his face onto the right side, so both his eye will move towards the left side as a principle of your doll's head phenomenon, and there will be less amount of your deviation leading to no diplopia. Okay, so what happens, that always the face will be turned towards the affected muscle side. So here what happened, the right lateral rectus was having a problem, so the face turns towards the right hand side. Okay, so if there is a left lateral rectus paralysis, so what will happen, the face will turn towards the left side. So that is how it is generally done. Or else in terms of your vertical muscle palsy, there will be a chin raise or a chin down with a intorsion or an extorsion of head. So this is how you generally see your, whenever there is your vertical muscle, so you will have a chin up or a chin down. And finally there is your sensory adaptation. Patients, if that is into the early stages of life, when they have a such kind of squint, they will have a suppression scotoma corresponding to where actually the diplopia was happening, and that would lead to your suppression of image from one eye, and the patient will not have any more diplopia, and that could also lead to what we call it as your amblyopia. So these are generally seen but in the early ages where your neuroplasticity is very good, but as the patient are older who get a paralytic squint, they have more amount of diplopia, but with time they start suppressing the eye and they could start having your sensory adaptations. Thank you for your patient listening to this video. I hope you understood what is paralytic squint and what are the different clinical features associated with paralytic squint. Do subscribe our channel Optometry with Tariq for more videos on optometry and binocular vision. Thank you and goodbye.